Jungle Aviation and Relay Service, JAARS, here in Waxhaw, had the opportunity to be a first responder to Hurricane Helene relief efforts in Western North Carolina. It was amazing because it wasn't just JAARS staff that responded, it was all of JAARS supporters and partners. And we want to give a few highlights on what happened over the week.
On Sunday afternoon, being one of the only JAARS personnel up in the mountains, I went down into town to the FEMA meeting. The partners that we were with had mentioned that they had access to aircraft. The group collectively said, look, the Avery County Airport's closed. We don't have operations there. I raised my hand, said, no, I flew in just this afternoon. The airport itself is fine. There's no power, no water, no communications, but we are in the process of setting up all of those things right now. I expect that we're going to be able to be bringing aid in to the Avery County Airport as early as tomorrow. There was a gentleman across the room who basically stood up almost in his seat and said, if JAARS is here, we need to lean into them and let them help. They know these mountains. This is where they train. Thank you for being here.
JAARS pilots and JAARS training staff are very familiar with that location and terrain.
We have been operating in the mountains of North Carolina to do our advanced mountain training, tactical training for over 40 years.
Using the helicopter in those mountains, it wasn't scary, it wasn't new, it was something that we were just ultimately good at.
This is our backyard. We know these mountains, we know these runways. We were able to fly relief supplies into Strawberry Ridge, an 1,100-foot, 16% upslope runway. That's what we do. It's our bread and butter. It's what we do overseas. We train here to do it there. When we have the opportunity to do that work here in the U.S., we just have to lean in and help our brothers and sisters that live here in North Carolina. We have relationships established with the people that own the airport. We are in direct communication with the airport authority. We have friends that have hangars there at the airport. And so it was just a natural fit for us to come in and just set up our forward operating base and be a part of the relief efforts from that vantage point.
When we arrived, there was nothing. The power was out, the water was out. Within an hour of having wheels on the ground up there at Avery, I had the Starlink up and running and was able to get communications back to Waxhaw to tell Waxhaw what all the situation was up there. They advised to continue working on power solutions. Shortly thereafter, the folks from Pennsylvania with the water rescue showed up and had an extra generator. I used that generator to be able to open the hangar doors so that we could start getting supplies into the main hangar.
They're both needing formula. The hospital needs some sugar.
So Caleb just brought me some of that request and I already sent it to JAARS.
Okay.
So I will add insurance.
So our ops base here in Waxhaw was gathering data, phone calls, needs up in the mountains, specific locations, and mapping them with red dots, yellow dots, and green dots as to their severity of need. And Brandy was in charge of sending out the aircraft, receiving calls.
And she'd say, well, here's our needs list and here's a whole stack of high priorities. And then she'd flip over to the map and we could block them to what region on the map they were on and say, all right, we're going to take this one and this one and this one. We'll load up the helicopter for those supply needs. And while we're there, we're going to run reconnaissance.
People were calling and aircraft were flying, and it is hard to have organization without a person on the ground.
What we saw as we did our reconnaissance, particularly going from high ground to low, on an entire mountainside worth of trees was ripped out by the roots and were all laid over facing the same direction. The river was flowing far out of its banks, was carrying huge quantities of downed trees with it like battering rams, and was wiping out everything in its path.
So the hazards there weren't so much the high winds, it was more the wires that crossed the canyons, some of the roads that had been eroded. The foundations of the roads were almost gone. We had to be careful where we landed down in the low-lying parts. So it was more the darkness and the obstacles that we couldn't see versus the winds and the higher altitudes.
Over the course of the week, 7 JAARS aircraft were deployed to the relief effort. Our operation delivered approximately 270,000 pounds of aid via air and ground transportation. To put that into perspective, the National Guard brought in 200,000 pounds of aid on Monday, September 30th. Thank you to all those in the community and JAARS supporters that came and brought the necessary resources. We filled these hangars up twice, not to mention all of the donations that came in to make this relief effort possible.
We're having a bunch of fixed-wing aircraft, both from JAARS and from the surrounding community, flying in with all sorts of different sizes of loads of supplies. And so we would help all the aircraft unload all their items, bring them into the hangar and sort out all our food items, our water, our toiletries, our baby supplies.
I was able to get onto the ham radio and communicate with the Emergency Operations Center at Mount Mitchell, who told a whole bunch of the other operations centers around the county that we have stuff, and all of a sudden people started showing up.
We were also able to help a lot of the new pilots who came up there to drop supplies and giving them a briefing on how to get into Avery County, how to get out of Avery County. I gave weather reports every morning and throughout the day so we could get the airplanes there as soon as it was safe.
By Monday, they had cleared most of the trees from the roads. They've been cut away so that we could get by. Wednesday, we had 9 vehicles. We've had a mulching company have provided a vehicle that is able to carry a high capacity of cargo. They've been carrying about 12,000 pounds of water, drinking water.
It was an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Christ to our neighbors here in North Carolina, and to give back a little bit to these people who've been so generous to us over the years with the use of their property and their resources.
Praying for our brothers and sisters in Western North Carolina is going to be an ongoing thing. This relief effort, this immediate response that JAARS was able to do is just that, an immediate response for the interim period. Now we have the professional relief organizations stepping in, the people that are going to come in and walk alongside Western North Carolina as they rebuild their homes, their roads, their infrastructure. We need to stand, actually we need to kneel and be begging God for His comfort for them over these next few months as they grieve the loss of their family members, their colleagues, their co-workers. The work we do regularly overseas is covering that last mile of missions so that the unreached can experience God's word and His love. Overseas, we're not usually dealing with a catastrophic event like Hurricane Helene. Thankfully, over the last week, with the relief efforts that we've seen, those roads are opening up. They have access now. But overseas still, those roads don't exist. So we have plenty of places all around the middle of our planet, which we call the green band, where those roads probably will never exist just because of the terrain. We have to continue to lean into this work of covering that last mile of missions so that people can understand God's love for them.
Please continue to pray for the victims of Hurricane Helene. There's just so much work that needs to be done. And as JAARS moves off the front lines of relief work and moves into a position of supporting partners in the region, we just want to thank you for all your support thus far, and please continue to pray for those in the region. If you want to learn more about JAARS and what we do globally, this work, this relief work, getting the gospel across the last mile into some of the most remote parts of the planet, go to jaars.org where you can learn more.